Welcome to the Emblazing Leaders Vodcast. I'm your hostess, Dr. Talisa Sullivan. Join me as we hear from leaders across diverse fields around the world. All right, Emblazing Leaders, we have with us Steve Ayon. Steve, I am so excited to have you with us on today. I would love to either introduce you or have you introduce yourself, whatever you prefer. Our audience just wants to hear some expertise from you. Would you like to give us a little bit about you, or would you like for me to read to the people who you are? I'd like to do either.
You could do it, and if I need to fill anything in, I'll do so.
Yeah, let's do that because I really do want to. I want to capture who you are. I want people to know who they have before them. And so let me tell you all about Steve. He is a pioneering force in data analytics and visualizing his owner. I'm sorry, you know what, y'all? I'm gonna tell you all that he owns his own business. I'm gonna say that because sometimes reading is kind of difficult when you're like when you're right in the middle of wanting to ensure that you capture the essence of who a person is. But I'm gonna try this again. He is the owner and principal of Usable Data. As the creator of the LCAP Buddy, he's transformed how educational institutions handle data-driven decision-making. During his tenure at Riverside County Office of Education, he developed an innovative needs assessment tool and reimagined the California school dashboard using Tableau. His expertise has earned him invitations to present before California State Board of Education at numerous educational conferences. His impact was recognized with RCOE's prestigious Milo P. Johnson Award of Distinction, celebrating his dedication to innovation and service enhancement in education. Steve's professional journey includes impactful roles at industry leaders Snowflake Computing, Cal Poly Pomona, and Toyota Motor Sales, USA's North America Parts Logistics Division, enriching his approach to data solutions and organizational efficiency. Like, audience, give us a virtual yay for Steve. Like, I'm really excited. And Steve and I had an opportunity to connect at RCOE, and I just adore having you on. So I want to get started with a few questions, or actually, tell us something that I didn't get a chance to capture before we start.
I mean that covers a lot of it, but the reality is, since I started my professional career working at Toyota Motor Sales, everything kind of really centered around data and continuous improvement. And it's really kind of kept carrying forward in my career as I went along. I worked at Cal Poly Pomona. I was doing their data warehouse. I was a business intelligence architect. So I did everything end to end there. Then I worked at RCOE. And I did a lot of data work supporting all the districts, and then I went, back to working for, private. I was working in private sector selling to public sector. So I even went into sales selling technology and, AI solutions and things like that. But everything, even when I was at RCOE, I was in the assessment, accountability, and continuous improvement unit. So again, everything always seems to revolve around data and continuous improvement. And I love those things. So while I didn't plan my career out that way, it seems like those are themes that have carried me throughout everything I've done, even to now as I've created my own company to assist LEAs and schools and districts just kind of improve, close gaps for students, and just do it in a more efficient way.
That's super exciting. And I know that we've worked together before, and I actually didn't know that you had all of that extensive background in working for data companies and things like that. But I do know that every time I've encountered you and any time that I've asked for anything as it relates to data, it was above and beyond and next level. So I'm super excited to have you on. And I do want to get into some questions for our audience. I know that they're here really to talk about navigating leadership space. But before we do that, I know that you developed the LCAP Buddy. I want to hear a little bit about that before we dig into some questions about navigating leadership. Can you tell us a little bit about the LCAP Buddy that you developed?
Yeah, it's actually taking a lot of the data from California Schools dashboard, but really putting an extra spin on it that really focuses on uh, trying to create, again, similar outcomes for all students, regardless of circumstance, which is the original goal of LCFF. So it really takes the data, but I calculate it in a way that allows you to see true comparisons of gaps that exist between students. So if you're looking at Asian versus non-Asian, a student with a disability versus one, that doesn't have an IEP. You're actually able to see that, and you're able to see that over time. That's something that the dashboard just doesn't show you. And again, I'm able to provide these to districts, especially smaller districts. I'm finding that those are the ones that are most interested, because when we talk about just leveling the playing field, smaller districts do not have, the resources or the expertise. I just spoke to yesterday a single school district, and the principal is the CBO. He's does all this, has like 5, 6 roles that he does, and he doesn't have time, to really collect data, analyze it, create presentations, and still be able to do meaningful engagement. And in our conversation, he says like, well, for me, this is a game changer because it saves me so much time that I can actually focus on helping kids now, and I don't need to create all these presentations, all this analysis. It's done for me. And so that's kind of the goal. Like, I thought I was just going to be helping kids. I'm really helping the administrators help the kids, so I like that.
Yeah. Wow, that's super exciting, and I'm glad to hear that. And I definitely, again, I will get into the question, but I really do want to know, like, what website can people go to in order to like learn more about my buddy or what is it? I'm sorry, LCAP buddy, the LCAP buddy. I was gonna say mybuddy.com, but the
Yeah.
LCAP buddy. What's the website, or how do they contact you in order to know more about that?
Yeah, that's at thelcap.com. So very easy to remember.
No, thelcap.com. All right. Well, thank you for that. Well, thank you. So I'm going to jump right into to the first question that we have for you today is, we're going to talk about navigating this space that we call leadership, right? So tell us more about your leadership journey, and what would you say has shaped you as a leader? The person that I see and that I know and that I've engaged with so often, what has shaped you?
For me, I think my journey, I'll just say this much. I've actually never had like a formal manager role where I was in charge of leading like a large team or anything like that. And all my leadership experience, has been from being more of an individual contributor, and kind of, working with whoever my leader was and supporting them. And that kind of enabled me to be a leader in that space as well. So, and my journey actually is kind of funny. Starts in high school, where I played in a punk band with my 2 brothers, being the younger brother who got teased a lot for being kind of nerdy. You know, I we had jammed and done things for years, but then I started writing music, and I kind of became the de facto leader because I was writing all the music and having to kind of set the tone for the music and the band and everything, and that's kind of was my first experience truly just kind of leading a team, which was my 2 older brothers, and so that was an experience that really kind of taught me a lot already, even just navigating those relationships, even with your siblings, you know,
Absolutely.
and sometimes those are more difficult, so even like early on, just little things like that, like whenever I got put into a role, uh, I find ways to contribute, and be effective, and formally becoming a leader in a lot of these things that I was doing. So even when I was at Toyota Motor Sales, I started off as a warehouse employee. I was shipping and picking parts. But even then, I started elevating my brand by one, doing good work, showing leadership skills. I started running continuous improvement projects, and that actually became a role that I grew into, and I did that for an entire year. All I did was continuous improvement projects, trying to, again, reduce waste, improve efficiencies, improve quality, improve safety. So again, just even though I was doing informal leadership, I just kind of kept on that path. And so I would say that just kind of what got me there was always kind of pushing beyond the role that I was given,
Mhm.
and so same thing happened as I moved uh, into Cal Poly Pomona, where again I wasn't really a leader. I had a role dropped on my lap because the person that did the work I fell into, they were promoted. They became my director, and so I was thrown into having to do all the what we call ETL work, which is getting all the data from the source systems into the data warehouse and doing all the visualizations and doing everything end to end. Fortunately, he was a great mentor and he was still around, but he was a director, so he was busy. He didn't have time to really just sit with me and teach me everything. But again, that's something that I had to navigate. And again, forced me to learn that when you're a leader, you're not given all the answers.
Right.
And if you're lucky, you have good mentorship that helps you along. But that kind of set me up for working at RCOE, where I fell into a role that was created, and I was the first person in that role. So somebody was, had the foresight to think like data is so important that we need to have a person embedded on the program side to work on this. So it was an amazing opportunity. I really was left kind of alone to develop the position and to, again, take some leadership and ownership of that role and take it to what it was. So I think even though I've not been a formal leader, I've become a leader in that space by the work that I've done, and really a lot of the work that I shared. Right? Because if you're not sharing the work, you're not really a leader. You're just keeping it to yourself. So I really learned that sharing the work, making things available throughout the entire state, is what really got me viewed as a leader, by people beyond Riverside County Office of Ed.
Yeah. And I would say, Steve, that, you know, leading people doesn't necessarily make the leader, right? Because there are people that are in leadership roles that are not, and that are actually leading people that may not necessarily be viewed as a leader. They'll call them managers. I think leadership is what you have exuded. And I'll say that because I've experienced it. If I had just had you on and we had never had an encounter, I'd be like, oh, okay. But I've encountered you on multiple occasions where, yes, you are a leader. And even though it wasn't a leader of people, we have to have those people on both sides. And what I'll say is, I've worked in so many different organizations. I've worked across Southern California, but in those organizations that also that see that there are different types of leadership roles that are necessary for success, they will value those leaders that are really strategic and great at leading people, and those leaders that are really strategic and great at creating systems and ensuring that systems are in place to ensure that the people who need them are able to access those systems. And I'll say some schools and organizations, like community organizations, might have two co leads. One of the things I love in the work that I do, my independent work, is I love having co-leads. Someone is going to be the people person. The other person might not necessarily be as much, but they certainly might be a systems person. And so I think we need to value both. And so I'll say you are a leader, and I've experienced it firsthand. The first person I would go to would be you. Every time I'd be like, I already know I'm going to get support. I know I'm going to get help. I know that I'm going to get the strategies, anything that I need for the districts that I'm serving. So I just wanted to really reassure you of that. And then I'm going to move into the next question so that I can hear a little bit about, because you mentioned that, you did not necessarily leading people, but definitely projects and definitely data driven things. I want you to be able to share your experience with managing up. And I'll give a little, if you've had that experience with having that leader that you might have had to give a little bit of a nudge if there might be something that they needed you to, that we needed them to understand about navigating their leadership. So share your experience with managing up, and what strategies can you share with other leaders that they can use in order to navigate space where they have to manage up?
I think there's a couple of things to that. The first one is truly understanding what the vision, two, what the goal is of the organization, and then finding out what's truly important to your manager. I think that's, what are the things that keep them up at night? What are the things that they worry about? If you're supporting your manager in those areas, then one, you become indispensable. Two, you become not just somebody that's being led, but you become a partner. And I think that's kind of where I've worked really well with my managers. I've had the fortune of having incredible managers. I've only had a few that, they were just there kind of for the paycheck. They weren't bad, but they weren't great either. And thankfully, it's only been like one or two. But really, everybody I've worked with has been pretty amazing. And I found ways to partner with them. And always having honest conversations with them. Even when there's a lot of tasks and things that have to get done, you talk to them and say, well, I cannot get, I can't do, X, Y, and Z in the time you're giving me. So as long as you tell me what's important to you, I can drop one or the other. But you have to be honest, and you have to know how to say no in a good way,
Right.
and bring them in to help you find out what's their priority. Because there's been times when I thought something was a priority and it wasn't, and I just pushed something aside that I shouldn't have. Early on in your career, you kind of do those things, and then you realize, oops, that's not what was really required immediately, because it wasn't made clear to you. But this is where I think that's part of managing up. You have to ask questions, and you have to understand what your manager or your leadership team truly needs, right now. And I think that's part of the managing up. It's setting expectations, but also making sure that you're coordinating with them. I feel like even working at Riverside County, I had an amazing director. Uh, and in working with her, it didn't really feel as much like she was managing me, but it felt like we were a partnership. And, I didn't feel like she was in front of me. I felt like I was alongside of her. So I think being able to work that way, because she had her strengths, and I had mine. And she would just simply defer to me and say, if it's something that has to do with data and data strategy, you know, then she would kind of let me take the lead. And I think once you have a manager that you work like that with, it's pretty amazing. You can get so much done. So I think it is really building that partnership and that rapport with your manager, so that you can really both start doing what, you're a team, right? They brought you on because you have a specific set of skills, that your manager may not have. So again, it's complementary skills working together and knowing when to take that leadership role. And then sometimes just learning when to just step back and do what's asked. Because that's part of the being in a team too, right? Not everybody's gonna be the star all the time. Sometimes there's just work that, that's a grind and you have to do it. So it's good to know at different points in time what your role is. And I think that's also how you also help manage up, because sometimes you just do what's asked. You have a task and you have to do it. It doesn't matter if you like it, as long as it's, nothing, like I said, as long as it's not immoral, illegal, I'll do it, that's fine,
Yeah, I love this conversation, and I know that our emblazing leaders out there that are listening or watching can actually hear the leadership skills that Steve has. I know y'all hear it, and I know y'all see it. Because one of the things that you talked about with managing up is you talked about navigating what your leader needs. Like some of the things, if you are a servant leader, which we all like say that we are, you know, um, managing up really is about making sure that you are navigating the space so that you can ensure that your leader has exactly what they need in order to be successful, and then also in turn they will take you on as a partner. It sounds like what you're saying, and it's more of a partnership more than them leading you or you leading them. It's a partnership where your skills are being tapped into. They're playing to their strengths, they're playing to your strengths. So thank you for that. That is so profound, and I know that leaders out there are going to need that tip, because I remember even myself, not understanding how to navigate when I'm like, what do they need? What do they want? But just hearing someone say, you know what, listen, learn, make sure that you know where you can fit in and utilize your strength, but also know when you need to kind of like step back a little bit and allow for other strengths to kind of stand in the forefront. So thank you for that. Those are great points. I'm going to talk a little bit about advancing in careers. So, what role has continuous learning and professional development played in your career advancement, and how do you prioritize it?
I think it's absolutely necessary. If I look at everything I learned in college, even down to high school, doing calculus and all these things, that we take and that we no longer use, depending what your job is, it's like they teach us calculus and then, we use Excel, to do calculations, so, not everything you learn you actually end up using, unless that's part of your specific job, but what you're trying to learn from those things in college is how to think, and how to figure out how to navigate a system, learn how to solve problems. And that's really what you're learning, and having like a base set of information that you can start, as a foundation so you can start working off of. But really, a lot of the things I learned, it was just that, a foundation, when I was in college, and I actually have a master's degree in education. Most people probably don't even know that, because I just do data work, right? Or mainly do data
Didn't
work.
know that, right? Absolutely.
So But part of the reason I went for that master's degree, it's because it really felt like it dovetailed into what I already do. It was educational multimedia, which meant doing instructional design and, and transferring knowledge electronically, which is what I was already doing with a lot of my data work and doing the visualizations and the reporting and things like that. So I really wanted to learn how do I take this information and present it in a better way, right? And use uh, understanding things like cognitive load and how people learn, the science of learning. That's kind of really what I wanted to get at. So that's part of the reason I did that, so I could learn that side of it. More of the, more of the, kind of that master's level education and doing those kind of things, not just everything I learned, in my bachelor's, which is more information systems related and more being a business analyst. So all these things kind of built on top of each other. And really, a lot of the technologies and the tools and the things that I've learned, a lot of it, again, my formal education set me up for that, but it didn't teach me that. A lot of that I had
Mm,
to learn on my own. And I think if you're going to grow and develop your career, you simply cannot depend on organizational development on its
right.
own. You really have to take some initiative. Um, I mean, many of the tools and programs and programming languages I've learned were not things that were taught to me, uh, through my employers. It was, or my organizations. It was really things that I took on my own. I would do that at lunch, in the mornings. My wife would make fun of me. She has a picture of me reading a book about data, in the morning when I'm sitting in bed, and she thought it was funny. She's like, really? Like, this is what you do on your spare time? But I feel like you need to do these things, right? If you want to develop yourself, you want to grow, you want to improve, you don't you don't leave it to someone else. You have to do it yourself. And again, finding, tutorials and finding little projects to do as well, especially like on the technical side of things. You have to find a project, like a lot of the programming languages that I've learned and programs that I've learned is because I decided to actively do a project with that software, with that programming language. Um, because it's easy to get comfortable with what you know and not push yourself. But I would actively make a decision, well, for this next project, knowing I have extra time, maybe an extra week, I can figure it out, learn it, and produce something with this tool. And now I have something else, in my tool belt that I can use. So I think you really have to start owning your own professional development if you're going to advance your career. And also talk to your manager too. This is another thing with your manager. Let them know what your interests are because a lot of them will help you. They want you to succeed, even if they don't
Yes.
want you to leave and they know that's a possibility. But they know that you're still going to contribute so much more while you're there. So I think it's important to do that. Work with your manager. They might even have suggestions for you on how to improve or things you may not have thought of. Said like, well, we're going to be working on these kinds of initiatives. Maybe you want to learn, X, Y, and Z because it might help you as well to help us. So again, having those conversations, taking professional development on, yourself and make it your responsibility. I think those are important things to advancing your career.
Wow, yes. Oh, I just love hearing you talk about this because I hear you saying take an opportunity to like learn on your own. Like sometimes organizations may not have the opportunity that or the capacity to offer it to you, or maybe they just don't have the resources. But if you take that initiative on your own, then you're actually pouring into yourself. And so, and then I kind of chuckled a little bit when you mentioned that your wife said that, this is what you do on your free time. Because my daughter actually told me, like, Mom, you got to get a hobby. I'm like, I do have a hobby. Like like I learn. That's my hobby. She's like, no, Mom, you need a different hobby. So I get it. Yeah. So I get it. So I love that you want to learn on your own free time. So thank you. Uh, we're going to talk a little bit about general leadership insights. What practices do you follow to ensure that your actions consistently align with your values and the principles of a servant leadership?
I mean, I think for that, it's really, again, I think it really is leading by example and I feel that if you produce good work and you start sharing it out, I think that is what servant leadership is. And I think people start viewing you as a leader and people start coming to you. I mean, to me, it's been really eye-opening, being an RCOE especially, where I truly started really sharing my work out into, into the broader state and other counties, and just sharing my work out. That's really kind of what made me a leader. Had I just in that space, had I just done that in Riverside County, and even just amongst our 23 districts, I don't think that would have happened. It's interesting that the more you share, like the more you get back.
Yeah.
And I did not realize that until I started really doing that on such a large scale. So that I feel like in terms of being able to share that, and especially when it's something that you truly believe in. And I feel that, again, improving outcomes for students, uh, and really understanding what's happening, that really helps us improve things. And,
Mhm.
and that's kind of, again, part of the reason I created the LCAP Buddy. And in fact, I do have reports available there that are at the state level. They can analyze all the gaps for all students, for all the indicators in the LCAP, and you can just download that from there. But you can actually start analyzing that and seeing how we're doing across the state. I mean, I think adjusted for inflation, I think the amount of money we've spent since like 2013 to now, it's about 40%. And again, that's adjusted for inflation. And a lot of our indicators are kind of flattish. Some have gone up a little bit, but we keep spending more and more. But what are we truly getting out of it? So, and I know it's different for different districts. Some districts are doing amazing work. Some school sites are doing amazing works. But then a lot of other schools have challenges, right? And even like right now, I mean, uh, the economy being the way it is, people have less resources. So people are getting hit pretty hard, and that makes it harder. I mean, if you can't eat, how are you going to worry about learning? There's so much going on, that it's so complex. But how do we address these things? And I think it's good to understand them at, down to those different levels, down to the school sites, not just at this high level, at the state or at an LEA. We really need to get down to where things happen, which is at the schools. So,
Right.
but sharing that information, I think, is what helps us get there.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So, last question, but not the last time that we'll ever have a conversation, because I'm sure we're going to do some work together, and I'm sure I'll have you on again. But future forward, what advice would your younger self give to the leader that I know today?
Oh, oh, geez. Well, here's the thing. The leader you know now is nowhere near where I started out as. I started out kind of very, very stubborn, always wanting to be right, and not always, and I wasn't always right. I tried to do everything on my own, when I was younger. That's just kind of the way I did things, and that wasn't the best way. I mean, I learned over time that I would tell myself, be more patient for one, find a good mentor, because really you can move a lot faster with some mentorship. And again, do some more formal learning if you need to. I mean, I'm also a musician, and I'm actually in the middle of taking a recording class on music production. Again, if you want to learn something, sometimes you have to go seek that knowledge out and even pay for it. And it has a good mentorship program. Again, it's not limited to even what I do for data, but in every aspect of what I do, I've learned that if I can find a mentor, if I can find leaders in the space that I can learn from, just steal their homework, right? Like if they've already done it, learn from them. Read books from business leaders. Learn from people that aren't in your industry, like education, right? You can learn a lot from people that aren't necessarily doing what you're doing, but just conceptually, what are they doing to move the needle and to improve things? So that's one of the things I've learned is you need to learn from diverse set of people. Even people we don't like, we can learn a lot from. So there's always room for growth, but definitely I would say, find a mentor, be more patient, uh, and you could probably move through faster. So I would say that much. And I think I've been fortunate. I've found good people to learn from as I got older. Uh, Admit when you're wrong too. I think I've been okay with that one. I can admit when I'm wrong. But again, early on, like I said, I was just so impatient, just pushing, pushing, pushing. I probably could just listen a little bit more, and always take feedback. A lot of times, like it hurts to hear something negative, but at the same time, sometimes we do need to hear it, and it's okay. Don't take it personally. I think that's how we grow. especially, if you're not the best at something, which is okay. We're not going to be the best at everything out of the gate, right? Everybody starts off as a beginner. So,
Yeah. Wow. Oh, you had so many nuggets that I definitely want to hone in on a few. I'm going to start with mentorship. You said, you would have told your younger self to find a mentor, to make sure you have a mentor. And I think that's so profound. And I hope our listeners and our viewers and our watchers can hear us reminding you that mentorship is everything. Find a mentor, be a mentor. And the other thing is that you said be patient. And that's one of the things that many leaders do struggle with, is being patient for the process. So thank you for those and everything else. And the other one that I really wanted to say is feedback. Feedback is so important. So I appreciate that you pointing that out. Without that feedback that we need as leaders, none of us would be the excellent leaders we are today. The feedback is what helps us grow. And those individuals that don't want to hear feedback, you still raggedy. No, I'm just joking. That's not nice. But if you don't value the feedback, you will not grow as an individual. So I want to say thank you to my friend, my colleague, and just an amazing person overall, not just an amazing leader, but an amazing person. So I want to thank you. I want our listeners and our viewers to just give you a virtual round of applause for being here today. And if there's anything else that you want to say, this is a great opportunity to approach our listeners and our viewers. Is there anything else you have for us before we exit on
no, I
today?
mean, I think that's about it. This is a great conversation. It's really been nice catching
Yeah,
up. It's been a while since we've spoken, so it's been
absolutely.
great. But again, if you do want to work with me and you want to learn about more about what's happening in your school district or even just across the state, I have that information at the LCAP.com. You can go download the state reports that show all the equity gaps. I mean, I'm even using AI to generate insights and tell us what's going on with those. So, and the state reports are freely available there, so you can start analyzing them. In fact, I might be putting out some videos where I go through, analyze an indicator at a time, just so that we can, kind of share that information out.
That'd be great. Wow. Okay, you heard it here. Go to the LCAP, the LCAP.com in order to connect with Steve. Thank you, Emblazing Leaders. Have a great evening, morning, afternoon. We will see you on the next episode.